Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing Twilight, written by Stephenie Meyer. Here's the book. Now, I've not seen any of the movies. I've not read the books before, so I'm forcing myself to read all the books, the whole series. Most people know about this story. I didn't know the whole story, but I do now, for this book anyway. And I can't say I enjoyed the read that much. It's just not well written. There are things in there that don't make sense. There are characters there that don't make sense. There's dialogue there that doesn't make sense. There's a lot in the book that doesn't make sense. So I'm not a huge fan of the book. I don't know what that means for the rest of the series, but I'm going to read the whole series anyway. Most people on Earth are going to know the plot of this story, back to front. Maybe. Maybe you've read the book, maybe you've seen the movie. I've not seen the movie. I've just read the book once. The first time I've read it, which is just now. But I don't know if I need to see the movie. Is the movie like the book? Is the movie better? Do I need to see all the movies after I read the books? I'm not sure. Maybe somebody can tell me if it's worth watching the movies, so I don't waste my time. But I'll describe part of the plot as I see it. So when this book starts, we have a girl moving from Phoenix to a small town. And it rains all the time in this town. It's overcast, gloomy, raining all the time. And that's going to work, isn't it? Because a snarky girl wants to move to a gloomy town, and it's going to make her feel better. And you can kind of see that the character's going to be snarky all the time with that weather, because she's very snarky at the start of the book. And Bella, because you can't call her Isabella. She doesn't like that. Bella is snarky to her parents mostly at the start of the book. And why? Because her parents, they seem a bit odd, but they're not terrible people, really. But, emails from her mother to say, how are you? How are you going? How are you settling in? Apparently that's reason to be snarky and snide. Her father, Charlie, asking her, how are you going? How was school today? What are you up to? That's a reason to be snarky because, the father asking her one question, it's like the third degree. It's an interrogation. So it's really easy to dislike snarky Bella. And I have to say that snarky side to Bella made me dislike the character in the story. So the girl in the town that she doesn't like is going to go to a new school that she knows she's not going to like. She just knows she's not going to like it. She hasn't even had her first day yet. She goes to school and she's, has some negative thoughts about it. She doesn't want anybody to talk to her. She thinks everybody's strange. She's glad nobody talks to her at the start. Then she is upset because nobody talks to her at the start. Then when people start talking to her, she's upset because they're talking to her too much, trying to get too close to her. Then when guys start talking to her, and this is strange as well, that virtually every guy in the school she came across wanted to talk to her and wanted to ask her out. Is that real? Is that going to really happen? But it happens in this book. And every time that happened, she's like, oh, get away. I don't want to even talk to this guy. Then another guy is jealous because this other guy is talking to her. And then the guy over there is jealous because those two guys are talking to her. So she seems to have every guy in school talking to her and being jealous when other people are talking to her. And she's either liking it or hating it depending on her mood, which switches just all the time. Virtually every hour she's in a different mood. Doesn't change as much as the weather in the town they're in because the weather doesn't change. It's either gloomy, raining, occasional sunshine. Doesn't last for long though. But then she spots 5 people sitting together at a cafeteria. And I think she spots them on her first day. And she's kind of eyeing off one of them, and she thinks he's eyeing off her. So they're just, sharing these little glances to each other. Then she's worried, has she glanced too much? Is he glancing at her too much? Is he glaring at her? Why is he glaring at her? Is he angry with her for some reason? What has she done? How could she do anything? She hasn't talked to him, doesn't know him. And so we get a lot of that going on in the story. His looks. He's looking at her in a way that's nasty. Then he vanishes for a few days and she's upset because he's not there. He can't look at her nasty or not. And then he comes back and he sits away from her. I mean, they're sitting together in biology, but he sits at the edge of the table, so he's away from her as much as possible, and she's upset about that. But then he's sneaking glances and he's glaring at her at one stage. Why is he glaring at her? She's thinking. And then, why is he not glaring at me? Why does he move closer? Why does he move further away? All this happens on and off in the story. There's so many descriptions about people glaring, not glaring, about people, are they angry, not angry, about people shifting away, getting closer, about our own feelings. Why doesn't he like me? Why is he looking at me now all the time? Why is this person talking to me? Why not? It just drives me crazy to see all these different descriptions going on again and again in the story. Because while we've got so many pages devoted to all this, where's everything else in the story? What else is trying to engage readers in the story other than these two characters sharing glances and glares and snide comments, because they do a lot in the story in their dialogue, and their dialogue's another problem. Their dialogue is just full of things that just switch, change so often. It's like watching two hyperactive chihuahuas in a room who also are a bit manic. They snarl, then they're friendly. Then one walks away shyly, the other one follows, the other one turns around and snaps, and that goes on and on again in the room. That's what it's like watching when you've got these two characters in this story. But then he saves her from being crushed by a car. And she's wondering, something's a bit strange about Edward. A normal boy couldn't stop a speeding van or a car that's going to crush her. Surely that's not possible. So it's running through her mind, and she takes a long time to get to a conclusion that something's a bit strange. Then she confronts Edward, and Edward somehow convinces her that she imagined it or, didn't happen. But clever Bella is still not sure about that. Something's still odd about Edward. So she's pondering that. And while she's pondering that for, seems like quite a few days in the story, her and a couple of friends that she's made to the school, because this awful school that she was going to hate, she's made some friends. They go to a shopping trip in a nearby town. And while she's there, she walks off by herself. And then, we've got a few things about Bella in this story. She's clumsy. Apparently she can't walk in a straight line without falling over. And wherever she goes, she attracts trouble. So in this small town where there's no crime whatsoever apparently, suddenly 4 strange men start to follow her, and of course you get the impression that they've not got her best intentions at heart. And then out of nowhere, Edward turns up in his flash car, and she jumps in and she's rescued. And Edward admits that he's basically stalking her. So he's been following her, and he admits that he's following her because he can sense her psychically. So he's a psychic stalker. Still a stalker, but that's okay because it's psychically. Must be okay, because Bella then agrees to have dinner with him. Let's go out on a kind of date, because that's what you do. When you find out someone's stalking you, even psychically, you go to dinner with them because, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's going to be safe. So then we have the whole romance starting between Bella and Edward. And a lot of normal stuff happens, but a lot of weird dialogue happens as well, where they just chop and change all the way through the dialogue. Bella says something, she snarls. Edward's a bit shocked and he tries to say something nice or flirt. Bella then decides, I'll flirt back. Then Edward snarls as well because Bella's getting too close because she's flirted. And then Bella's shocked because Edward snarls. Why is he snarling at her all of a sudden? It just changes all the time in their dialogue. And it's just tiring to read that because you got to keep up with it. You got to keep up with their moods changing with every line in the book, in that dialogue. And it's very hard to keep up with. When are they happy? When are they snarling? Why? It doesn't make sense, that dialogue. I don't get why it's written in that way. And I don't get why writing their dialogue in that way makes for a great romance story. It doesn't make sense to me. But then we have the big change in the story, I guess the big build up to some sort of danger. And the way it builds up to that doesn't make sense to me. They're going to play a game of baseball, because by that stage, Bella's met Edward's family, and she knows the truth about them all. And she's happy about that. It makes sense to her, it's okay. She can live with it because she loves Edward so much. Anyway, move on from that. So they're going to play baseball, and they're playing it in a thunderstorm. And they're playing baseball in a thunderstorm in the forest in the middle of nowhere. I don't know why they had to wait for a thunderstorm, because they're in the middle of nowhere in the forest. Who's going to hear them? And it's described in the way that they have to play in the middle of a thunderstorm because they throw so hard and they hit so hard and everything that people could hear them play baseball in the storm. But no one's going to hear them because they're in the middle of nowhere in a forest. Who's around to hear them? So that doesn't make sense in the story. There's no reason for them to be in a thunderstorm getting rained on because of that. Then we have 3 strangers turn up, and they turn up earlier than expected because one of Edward's sisters is a bit psychic or sense things happen in the future. So she sensed that they would turn up at a certain date, but they're turning up early. And a bit of stuff goes on. There's a bit of, strutting around and a bit of posing going on, looking, angry or looking mean or looking strong, with Edward's family and these strangers. And then for some reason, one of the strangers is something called a tracker and decides that they want Bella. They want to hurt Bella, and these strangers are vampires as well, turns out. So then the whole story turns into this really complex mess, and it is a mess, about hatching a plan to get Bella out of town, back to Phoenix, where she can be safe and protect her from these strangers, and also to track the strangers and fight them and, whatever you have to get rid of them so Bella can be safe. And it just becomes a huge mess. Now, if you're one of the people who haven't read the end of the story, I won't give that away, because read it yourself if you can, get to the end and find out what happens. But a few things happen, and then they explain it away as other things to other people so they can hide the truth from them, but it just doesn't make sense. The explanations wouldn't add up to the evidence, right, at certain locations. So overall, the story is a jumble. It's a bit of a mess. There are so many things that happen in this story that don't make sense. Dialogue, events, just character traits. I don't know if I can put myself in the mind of the intended audience to say that I could read it and love the book. I don't know if that's possible, and I'm trying to put myself in that mindset. Imagine myself being the audience for this book, and would I enjoy it? And I don't think I would. Well, Bella, the main character, don't call her Isabella. I didn't really like this character. She's just so moody, so snarky. Are teenage girls like this really in real life? Do they act like Bella in real life? I don't know. But she's just all over the place, and I couldn't accept her behaviour to what's going on in the story. It didn't match to me. It doesn't gel. And just her thoughts about what's going on, her reactions to other characters in the story don't make sense either. So as a whole character in this book, I'm basing it on this book only, I don't engage with Bella very much, and I don't really like her as a character very much. Edward, the whole stalker vibe didn't really work with me. Explaining that you're a stalker, but a psychic stalker, so it's okay. Other things in the book as well explain all this stalker vibe going on with Edward. And if you've read the book or you want to read it, you'll find that out. But there are other ways to describe a character as mysterious and dangerous, other than having the character say how dangerous and mysterious he is so often in the story. I'm not joking. Edward says that in different language, but basically saying he's dangerous and mysterious again and again in the story. And that gets very old very quickly. And it's just not a good sign of character development in a book. If your own character is describing their main character traits again and again in the story, what's the purpose of the writing? The writer is meant to describe that in the way they tell the story. The character doesn't walk around and say, I'm mysterious, I'm dangerous, or how fun am I because I'm a fun character, and then 5 pages later, how fun am I? I'm a fun character, look at me, I've done something fun. It doesn't work like that in a book. Charlie, who's Bella's father. Look, the guy's written in the book as basically having no parenting skills and showing very little interest in his daughter and what his daughter's doing with her time. And that was strange as well in the story. And for a police officer character, he kind of lacks intuition. He lacks just something that makes you think that he's a police officer. It doesn't feel right in the story. And the whole thing about getting to know Edward in the story a bit later on, that was strange too, because they're best buds like in 2 seconds, and all those things don't add up to a good character with Charlie. There's just too many things going on that don't make sense. I can't say I enjoyed this book, really. I rated it a 1.5 out of 5. Now, I rated it a 1.5 because of 2 things. The first is we get to meet the people at the reservation. That's Jacob and his family and his friends, or the people who live there in the reservation. And we get suggestions about what that means, about who they are. So I liked that because I liked those suggestions because they weren't blatant. That part was written quite well in the book because it was just suggestive and it just hints that certain things may happen later on in the series. So I'm guessing the author already knew she was going to write sequels when she wrote this book. And she thought that in her mind, because you wouldn't suggest certain things about characters like that unless you had that in mind. And the other reason is that threat. I mean, that threat, outside threat coming in, even though the whole lead up to it and some of the actions when the threat arrived weren't written in the best way, the threat was interesting because it's something different. It takes away from the strange romance going on between Bella and Edward. You know, that romance where their dialogue is snarky and snide and all that sort of stuff. So it's 2 things that are different in the story, and they're different enough to make this rated a 1.5 out of 5. As I go through each book in this series, I will do a book review and put that video up on my channel. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. I also have a fantasy playlist on my channel. Should be on your screen now.